Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the organizer of Design 2020 conference on this session, Additive Manufacturing 2. In this session, today we will have presented by 5 papers, and we will go paper by paper by announcing the topic and the presenter. It will take about half an hour, and after that we will open the discussion. I'm encouraging also the authors, the presenters, to discuss about their papers during the discussion time, because maybe 5 minutes of presentation is too short to show everything that you have done in your work. Therefore, I'm encouraging you to also discuss some maybe important topics that are not in this short presentation. For the audience, I would like to ask you to put the questions during the presentations in chat form, in written form, but if someone really would like to ask personally his question or her question, in that case I would like to ask you to put a question after the first part of this session, after the presentations. So we can start with the first presentation. The title of the presentation is Parameters on Support Structure Design for Metal Additive Manufacturing. The authors are Sebastian Weber, Joaquin Montero, Matthias, Bleckmann, and Kristin Paetzold. My apology if I didn't pronounce correctly. And the presenter is Sebastian Weber. He studied mechanical engineering with a specialization in computational engineering at the University of Applied Science in Munich. He's currently a PhD student at the Institute of Technical Product Development at the University of the Bundeswehr Munich in the field of additive manufacturing. Beside his thesis, he worked on support structure design. He's involved in a project about spare part production using additive manufacturing. So, Philip, please, can you show us first presentation?
Hello and welcome to the paper Parameters in Support Structure Design for Metal Additive Manufacturing here at Design Conference 2020. My name is Sebastian Weber. I'm a PhD student at the University of the Bundeswehr Munich and doing research in the field of additive manufacturing with specialization on simulation and support structures. And I'm also involved in a project about reverse engineering of additively manufactured spare parts. What are the current challenges in metal AM? Printing parts successfully in the first try is a big issue, and support structures are necessary for part fixation and an even heat distribution, and are therefore very important for printing the first time right. Residual stresses lead to cracks and print failure, and these residual stresses can be reduced by the use of optimized support structures. Currently, research tackles only computationally expensive optimization approaches, such as topology optimization. And there are different types of support structure that can be automatically generated. Here on the right, we have an A, the volume support with fragmentation, in B, a tree-like support, C, the contour support, and D, the bar support. My research questions are, how must support structure be designed to achieve the best mechanical behavior of the part? And secondly, which type of support structure should be used at which point? For this, I came up with some parameters for the tree-like support, like diameter of the stem, diameter of the branches, ramification height, number of the ramifications, as well as number of the branches themselves. We wanted to check the effect of those parameters against the chop result, here as support strength, part strength, surface roughness, support removal time, printability, material consumption, and printing time. The errors in this matrix are based on our own experiences, and you can see that the number of the branches has the biggest effect on the job result, as well as the diameter of the stem and the diameter of the branches. We also built one of those matrices for the manufacturing parameters as laser power, scanning speed, and so on. But here the arrows are based on a literature review of 2019. The third matrix is the matrix of correlation effects of the build properties. If you want to have a closer look, please feel free to look it up in the paper. So the outcome of this paper is a design of experiments, and we decided that the manufacturing parameters are considered as noise factors. We have 7 independent design parameters as control factors, and the support strength selected as response because it's a continuously measurable value that is better suited than discrete values. Then the testing approach for the screening is tensile testing, and we selected the number of levels to be 2 because a faster screening is possible. With this, we come up with a Taguchi orthogonal array L8 design and a Pareto chart to determine the significant factors. Combining now the data from the matrices with the hopefully results of these experiments, we can reduce the significant factors to 3 design parameters. And this leads then to a full factorial design in a second stage that has a level of 3 for the possibility of a quadratic behavior and a number of 27 necessary experiments. So if you have further questions, I really encourage you to have a look on the original article, again, the title, Parameters on Support Structure Design for Metal Additive Manufacturing. My name is Sebastian Weber. Please feel free to contact me via email. Telephone number is visible at our website, or follow me on ResearchGate. Thank you very much.
Please unmute yourself.
My apology. Thank you for the presentation. And we will proceed with the next presentation titled Volumetric Cells, a Framework for a Bio-Inspired Geometric Modeling Method to Support Heterogeneous Lattice Structure. The authors are Nikita Letov and Yaoyao Fiona Zhao. And the presenter is Nikita Letov. He's a PhD student in mechanical engineering at McGill University. His main research interest is geometric modeling of complex geometrical structures. He obtained his master degree in space and engineering system at the Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology, and his bachelor degree with honors in automation of technological processes and production at the Bauman Moscow State Technical University. He gained his expertise in geometric modeling while working on industrial projects at such companies as Airbus and C3D Labs. So please, Philip, can you put the presentation? Thank you.
Today I will be presenting our work on volumetric cells, which is a framework for a bio-inspired geometric modeling method to support heterogeneous lattice structures. Lattice structures are extremely popular in additive manufacturing field, as there's virtually no way to produce them by conventional means. But geometric modeling of them has always been challenging. This is because lattice structures are extremely complex from geometric point of view. We know that in any CAD software, the geometric modeling kernel actually renders curvatures as polylines, which is because any surface is represented as a triangular mesh. The effect is even more dramatical for the lattice structure, because they are full with holes and curvatures essentially, and they appear more edgy, and that does affect the printing and visual quality. One can reduce or increase model complexity by decreasing or increasing respectively the amount of polygons needed for its rendering. But what happens with lattice when it's simplified? It just becomes homogeneous at some point. And if we increase the level of detail of a lattice, the size becomes unbearable, often reaching gigabytes in size, and especially in case of heterogeneous lattices. Modeling of them is slow, designing them is slow, uploading them to a 3D printer is slow, and the whole process is slow. Let us get back to the source, to the idea of lattice structures, which comes directly from nature, as you can see from the examples on screen. Could that be that geometric modeling approach for heterogeneous lattice structures can be Bayer-inspired itself? The evolution process made the simplest organism on Earth converge to complicated and robust species, such as ourselves. So living cells are sort of built-in block of nature, unit cells, like voxels or finite volumes. In nature, we see that every cell, or almost every cell, is different from others, and that allows nature to sustain very complicated structures with unique properties. And that begs the question again, can we use different unit cells of different shapes and sizes, similar to cells in biology, to represent lattice structures? Considering the ways nature achieves such variety of shapes, there are several algorithms that were noticed in nature. For example, the long axis rule, which is basically determines that a cell divides by a plane passing through its center of mass and perpendicular to the longest axis. However, you can see from the lower row of the image on screen that this rule does not always hold, and that's because there's another rule, and they sometimes contradict each other. Cells also tend to minimize their surface to volume ratio, and the most optimal shape in this sense is a sphere. Sometimes external conditions and constraints, either geometrical or physical, do not allow spherical shapes, and that adds a little bit more to the variety of shapes in nature. For the verification of the long axis rule, a circular cross-section is discretized into volumetric cells, but every resulting cell is convex at every iteration. Moreover, in long axis rule, there's a high level of inconsistency between each volumetric cell, so the variety of shapes is quite large, and that's not very good from computer graphics point of view. The verification of the surface to volume ratio method is performed similarly, but every volumetric cell appears to have genus 1. It has a hole in it, and this is not a good practice in computer graphics either. But structures in nature do not follow only one approach. There is always a trade-off between certain development directions, and that's why we use the combined approach. Note that the level of detail concept can be applied to the result of the combined approach by combining neighboring vertices of two adjacent volumetric cells, and thus providing a modified version of the approach. This method provides the desired result, which is similar to the unit cells used for stress analysis of cylindrical structures, and also something that can be observed with cylindrical surfaces in nature. For the verification in 3D, we tried it on an actual lattice structure, and for that we adapted the IRID modeling environment, as it allows custom volumetric elements. So you see a heterogeneous lattice here with varying strut diameter, and note the details and how the whole lattice is made of sections and unit cells that form it according to our Bayer-inspired algorithm. And we compared it with other solutions. We see that in terms of memory, it's comparable with 2D mesh models, and it's better than voxel modeling. The CPU load is on around the same scale. The GPU load, however, could be better, and this is something that needs to be worked on in future research, but the size of the model rendered without Ignite is quite significantly smaller, which is a good result. Volumetric cells are also able to render complex geometry accurately, even at low level of detail, where a finite volume method and voxelization fail. For the further research, we plan to develop a trade-off algorithm between Bayer-inspired rules we proposed, because for now it is all done manually. Also, we plan to test it on more use cases and embed this algorithm into a full-scale tool for modeling of lattice structures. Also, the general optimization needs to be done. You can see my list of references here and here. Thank you for your attention. I would be more than happy to answer all your questions.
Thank you for this presentation, and we will go on the next one, titled Extended Approach to Optimize Modular Products Through the Potentials of Additive Manufacturing. We have three authors here, Kai, Eric, Werner, Heinz, Steffan, Michel, Fett, and Eckhard, Kirchner. The presenter will be Kai, Eric, Werner, Heinz. He is a research assistant at the Institute of Product Development and Machine Elements at the Technical University of Darmstadt. His area of research is methodical assistance through the potential of additive manufacturing process, the use of additive manufacturing process, which brings a multitude of advantages and boundary conditions. The aim of the research is a procedure model which provides the systematic consideration and use of the potentials of additive manufacturing process in the early phases of product development. Both potentials are restrictions and restrictions on the activities of the product and process development process are made available in a supporting manner. He was also a Master of Studies in Mechanical and Process Engineering at Darmstadt from 2015-2017, and about Bachelor Studies in Mechanical and Process Engineers at the same university from 2011-2015. So, Philip, please, can you proceed with that presentation?
Hello, welcome to my presentation. My name is Steffan. I'm a research associate at Darmstadt University of Technology. Today I'm going to show you the result of my research on an extended approach to optimize modular products using additive manufacturing processes. From a company's point of view, there are different strategies to adapt products to customer needs. One strategy is modularization. This, however, leads to an immense complexity that companies have to deal with. In the development of modular products, a conflict between standardization and optimization arises. Therefore, a compromise is required, which leads to over- and undersized components. I've chosen a motorbike as an example to illustrate the challenge of identifying components. Additive manufacturing offers new potentials, such as the standardization of the manufacturing process instead of product parts and the use of design freedom. In this way, these conflicts can be resolved or at least mitigated. But additive manufacturing is not appropriate for every part of the product. On a component level, it is very difficult to keep track. We want to know which components are particularly suitable for development or rework. The extended approach supports the analysis of the functional structure to optimize the modular product through the potentials of additive manufacturing. With this approach, we can identify certain areas and components that are suitable for further consideration. This brings me to the extended approach. With the requirements as a basis, a QFD is used to identify the functions of the product that are important for the customer. This enables a first reduction in complexity. To get a better overview, we initially look at the functional level and use cases that describe unique functional characteristics. Individual optimization areas can be identified on the basis of the input or the output variables. If the variables exceed the system boundary, they can represent the interface to the customer and are suitable for individualization. These partial functions which were chosen are carried to the search for the partial solutions. These are added to a morphological analysis. Now we can continue according to the conceptual phase and conclude the product development process with the design and documentation of the product. For the additive manufactured components, AM potentials and manufacturing restrictions are considered. At the end, we receive a modular product which has been specifically optimized by considering additive manufacturing. To illustrate the approach, I now present a generic motorbike helmet. The functional structure has already been developed and a part of it is shown here. In the upper green-framed area, we follow the kinetic energy in case of an impact onto the helmet through the product functions. This energy is converted by the different shapes of the components. At this point, the energy passes the boundary of the product. If this point represents an interface to the customer, we have thus found a potential location for additive manufacturing processes. With these steps, the development area can be identified very quickly despite complex product structures. Since individualized helmet partings significantly increase wearing comfort, this component is suitable for a freely formed shape. This avoids the need of over- and undersized components. In addition, further potentials of additive manufacturing are considered. The integration of lattice structures is another potential that can be used. This makes it possible to combine functions of all partings into one part. And here's the result. The lattice structure has a thickness gradient of the choice to achieve the different properties of the partings. The whole part is made of one material, and a 1 to 2.5 scale helmet illustrates the manufacturability as a proof of concept. Summing up, we use the functional structure to reduce the complexity of the product model. Due to the short time, I showed one of two cases known to identify development areas within the functional structure. And so far, first experiences in the application of the approach have been gained using a motorcycle helmet. So what's next? We need answers to the questions: what other cases are there for identifying development or rework areas? And How will the approach behave while developing a more complex and modular product? These exciting questions bring me to the end of my talk, and I look forward to a lively discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this presentation, and we can move on the next presentation titled An Approach for Topology Optimization Driven Design for Additive Manufacturing. The author is Axel Nordin from Lund University, and he holds a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Lund University in Sweden, and also PhD degree of engineering from Division of Machine Design. In his current role as assistant professor at the Division of Product Development and director of the mechanical engineering with industrial design program, he is involved with developing methodologies and tools for designing products that satisfy both users' needs and technical constraints. He has participated in 6 government-funded research projects. His research is mainly concerned with studying aspects of integrating complex morphologies into customized products, such as computational, manufacturing, structural, and usability challenges. He is specialized in topology optimization for additive manufacturing, generative design, and parametric design optimization. Philip, please, can you run the presentation?
Hi, my name is Axel Nordin, and I'm a senior lecturer at Lund University. And I'll be presenting an approach for topology optimization-driven design for additive manufacturing. Now, as you may be aware, there are some limitations to metal additive manufacturing, such as it requires support structures to anchor the part to the build plate and to conduct heat away. Now, these structures can be quite time-consuming and difficult to remove, and therefore, the parts should be designed specifically for metal AM, where consideration of overhanging features and part orientations is critical. This can be quite hard to do sometimes when you're using topology optimization. Now, topology optimization is a method for redistributing or removing as much material as possible from a part, while maintaining sufficient mechanical properties. The downsides to this is that it generates mesh-based, typically quite noisy geometry, and it's quite hard to interpret and modify the results from this optimization. It's not so straightforward. And in fact, there are many different approaches for how to interpret the results, but the most common ones is to either completely rebuild the design from scratch using CAD, or to simply smooth the mesh-based result. Now, this is a quick and efficient method, but what you get as a result is a low-quality mesh, and you have no real parametric control over it, so it's hard to modify afterwards. Other approaches include using polyNURBS surfaces that wrap around the mesh-based result. This generates smooth surfaces with some parametric control, but it's very complicated surfaces, and you still don't have that much control over them, not like a proper CAD model. Now, the third option here, which is what I'm presenting today, is lattice-based optimization, where we instead introduce lattices with varying density on the inside of the geometry. And the general concept here is to first conduct a free topology optimization, then run a topology optimization with overhang constraints, pick the result that's the most similar to the free optimization, and then remodel the geometry in CAD, and then perform a lattice optimization on that and prepare it for building based on that. Now, the benefits of this is that we get a fairly low design time, we have a high amount of parametric control, and we can also minimize the amount of support material needed. And this was applied to a demonstrated product, as shown here, in stainless steel. And the load cases, there were 4 of them in total that needed to be respected. The result from the initial topology optimization looks like this, with the free optimization, optimization with build direction in Y and in Z directions here. Now, in total, the Y direction constrained optimization was the most similar to the no constraint optimization, so therefore that was used to re-CAD the design. But the aim here was to keep the design as simple and controllable as possible while minimizing the amount of support materials. Then the lattice optimization was done using the settings shown here in ANSYS Workbench, resulting in a lattice-based structure as shown in this picture and on this picture as well. And the results based on the different types of optimization are shown here, with the nominal volume being 4.8 and the final optimized volume being 1.4. And this design was then validated using ANSYS Workbench again. The stresses here are within the limitations, the requirements that were set initially. It was prepared for build, adding build support, as you can see in this picture here, with fairly minimal amounts. And then finally, it was simulated and validated for build process using SimInfact Additive. And all in all, it showed that there were no part failures, although we were not able to actually physically build this due to the size of the parts. Now, the conclusions are that it's very computationally challenging to validate this, and therefore the mesh size has been limited in the studies. Other than that, the geometry cleanup and software compatibility was quite time-consuming. The stresses might not be entirely accurate due to the limitations in the mesh size that we could use using our computational resources. And we haven't added in holes to remove the powder. And of course, there are some aspects such as fatigue for cyclic loading, which we haven't looked at in this paper. Thank you.
Thank you also for this presentation. And we are approaching to our last presentation. And it is my pleasure to announce the last presentation. And there are two reasons. First of all, we have the only lady presenter with us in this session. And the second one is that your paper will be rewarded as a review favorite paper, because you are at the top 10% of papers according to reviewers' score. So you will receive your reviewer's favorite certificate after the conference, but the organizer asked me to congratulate you on behalf of them for your paper. So my congratulations to you. And the paper is Design of Simplified 3D Printed Artificial Under-Actuated Hand by authors Orabona Alessandro, Palazzi Antonio, Graziosi Serena, Feliz Francesco, and Monica Bordegoni. And the presenter is with us, Serena Graziosi.
Thank you.
Serena is you're welcome. Is associated professor in the Department of Politecnico di Milano. Her research activities are focused on the definition of design methods, tools, and processes to drive the development of a new product and services. Her research interests include design for additive manufacturing, experience design, for behavior change, and virtual prototyping. And please, Philip, can you run the last presentation?
Hi everyone, I'm Serena Graziosi. I'm an associate professor at the Department of Mechanical Engineering of Politecnico di Milano. I'm glad to present our study, which explores the contribution of technologies and materials in the design of artificial hands, and it describes our proposal of a low-cost and simplified robotic hand. Human-robot collaboration is one of the pillars of the Industry 4.0 paradigm, which is pushing the design of new gripping solutions inspired by the appearance and the mechanics of human hands. Why? First, because we are taking inspiration from the most advanced solution in nature, which is our hand, and second, if these two hands in this slide are designed based on the same principles, they can easily collaborate. And this consideration is not only valid for the design of industrial fitters, but also for prosthetics. So the need for adaptable, cheap, and less complicated solutions in the robotics and prosthetic fields has driven lots of interesting researches, stimulated by the rapid evolution of AM technologies and materials. For example, AM technologies can allow the design of robotic hands characterized by simplified and lightweight architectures, which can also be easy to assemble if parts are printed in place. Electronics could be directly printed within parts, and we could design customized solutions at a lower cost. And technology can also allow the design of highly flexible and adaptable components. By exploiting the properties of elastic and shape memory polymers, as well as of multi-material printing, we can design multifunctional parts capable of large elastic and bending deformations, even without the need of a physical actuation system. Several examples are already available in the literature in both cases, especially in the field of 3D printing robotic hands. However, we thought that still something more could have been done to further simplify the design and the control of these artificial hands. This is the assembly view of our robotic hand. The first element of novelty of our system is that the tendons, which control the movement of the fingers, are printed in place together with the finger. These tendons are powered by 3 servomotors, while wires are used to connect the tendons to the servohorns. One servomotor controls the thumb, one the index and the middle, and the third the ring and the little. This simplified control is inspired by the concept of hand synergies, which is how our brain effectively manages and controls the degrees of freedom of our hand when we perform a movement. The fingers are connected to the palm without the need for mechanical fastening. Planar notch joints were selected to connect the phalanges of the fingers and drive the fingers' movements. The geometry of this joint was designed to get the desired level of stiffness, and it is the result of a combined numerical and experimental approach. The phalanges length was selected by analyzing data of human fingers available in the literature, but we also used the MATLAB SIMGRASP toolbox to identify the best hand configuration from the kinematic point of view, and based on the selected manipulation tasks. Only 1 degree of freedom was considered for each finger. This analysis has provided the inputs for tuning the parametric models of the hands, which was further validated before printing the prototype by virtually simulating the manipulation tasks. The maximum liftable load at the tip was calculated through simple moment balance and through some experimental tests using weights. The selected servomotors do not allow the complete closure of the fingers. However, as you can see in this picture, this fact has not limited the grasping capabilities of our hand, which was successfully tested with cylindrical and spherical targets. This prototype has also some limitations. For example, the abduction and adduction movements of the fingers are not allowed. The prototype is not able to grasp some object from a flat surface, which means that the design and control of the fingers need improvements. And since the fingers are not sensorized, it's not possible to tune and control the pressure exerted by the fingers on the object. However, as you can see in this video, our prototype can also be used for performing other tasks. I hope you enjoyed our study. Thank you for your attention. Bye.
Thank you for the last very interesting presentation and very interesting design of this actuated hand. Now we are open for discussion, and as I already mentioned, first of all, I'm encouraging the authors to maybe discuss about their results more than they have the opportunity through these 5-minute presentations, as well as the audience to put a question either through chat or through direct question through the video or audio links. So the discussion is open. Well, can I have one question for first presenter, Mr. Weber? Do you hear me?
Yeah, of course. So if there's a question, I will answer it.
Yeah. You have showed us a few the design of experiment approaches to determine the optimal parameters for designing of a support structure. what was the criteria for a decision, for example, to use full factorial design instead of some of the designs from response surface methodology?
So actually, the idea was to have the screening beforehand and then move to a full factorial design only as soon as the input parameters are reduced to a minimum factor, so that the size of the full factorial design is limited. And the response surface approach, I think we also do it in some of our other examples that we are currently working on. But this was basically a first screening approach, which should then lead to the full factorial design.
For your answer. Maybe you have one question? No?
May I ask a question to one of the presenters?
Yeah, you're free to ask.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask a question to Nikita. So thank you very much for your interesting presentation. I'm curious to know how have you tried to implement this algorithm? I mean, what kind of, did you use MATLAB or other type of software to implement it? And whether are you thinking to develop a very nice and further Grasshopper plugin like LATTICE?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for your presentation as well. I really enjoyed it. So it is actually our lab which developed LATTICE previously. So but now we actually plan on developing a full-scale software that would be separate from Grasshopper, separate from Rhinoceros. So yeah, this is something that's will potentially be implemented in an actual software separated from existing ones. So yeah, so yeah.
And I'm curious, what are the differences? I mean, the advantages compared, for example, the field-driven design, or the design, the type of modeling used by a famous software in the field of lattices.
It seems to be more optimal from a computational point of view. Okay. So it works faster. However, it's not optimized very well because I didn't answer one of your previous questions regarding what we used to model it, like MATLAB or what it was. So we used IRIT, which is IRIT, which is a modeling environment developed some years ago. It is mostly scientific, and but the benefit of using it is that it allows custom volumetric unit elements, and that's why we based our approach on this one. But it hasn't been really adapted to our use case, so it needs to be adapted further if we want to actually use it in an actual software later on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We also have one question on chat, but maybe the participant, it's Peter Torlind. He has a question for Axel for paper 4. So, okay. He will try to put a question directly. If not, I will read it. Okay, he's here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, you can put a question.
Yeah, so I like your work, Axel, but I think it would be interesting to see about, because you have the internal structures, the lattices in the internal structure, sort of say. So that top surface of the inner surface, how do you inspect it, or how will that be? Because often you have the top surface is often very bad, especially if you have this kind of lattice structure and it looks like an ordinary lattice structure, and then you build sort of a flat surface on that. So how do you deal with that, the surface?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring it up. I didn't have time in the very short presentation to mention that. But in the paper, I actually discuss a custom support strategy for the top surface due to the problems that you mentioned. So the lattice structure itself is way too coarse to support the internal top layer. So therefore, I add a second lattice structure to the top layer, a sort of tree-like structure that supports the downwards facing internal surface. So if this is enough to yield good surfaces or not, I'm not sure. We haven't tested that part of the paper. But it's certainly something that one needs to be aware of. And it complicates the whole process because you can't do that in a single workflow. You have to jump in between Rhino and Grasshopper in this case and ANSYS in the other case.
I mean, if you compare to the, was it the first presentation with organic tree structure ideas? So I think it's sort of a, you should combine these ideas to really to build this organic structure. And I think that there is a big possibility to do that. But in the end, it's going to be quite difficult to get all the powder out from that because it's going to be quite small structures. It's easy when you have an open structure. You can just blow it with a compressed air or something like that. But when you have it inside, it's going to be quite tricky to get the powder out, I think.
Definitely.
We have this nice small tree structure. Yeah.
That's another limitation that I talk about in the paper, but I didn't mention in the presentation. But certainly where to put holes to blow out the powder and whether or not they make a difference structurally, that will also be a limitation to the approach for sure. Yeah. So that's something that needs more work and more validation, physical validation, to see exactly what's possible in terms of how easy it is to get the powder out and how many holes you need and whether or not it's a useful approach at all at that point.
Yeah, I think that the surface structure will be a big part of sort of the problems, how to solve surface structure, the quality of the surfaces, because we can't simulate that today, and it's really hard to do a good simulation of it. We know we have some guidelines, but it's really hard to get any good things. We need to do a lot of experimentation, I think.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of experimentation currently on the surface finishes, and that's a really interesting area to look at, to be able to model that as well, to keep that as, or to account for that in the optimization, or at least in the simulation as well.
May I jump in here?
Are you satisfied with the answer?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Axel. Do you have a...
May I jump in with a question to Axel here? So you said that you're going to put the support structure inside of the lattice structure. So how do you plan on removing the support afterwards? Because I guess it's super hard to get with the tools inside of the lattice structure.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry, I perhaps used the terminology a little bit offhandedly there. But the idea is not to remove the support structure. It's just that it's structures that are permanent that support the internal face that really serve no purpose except for enabling the building of the top layer, or the top surface, really. So they will add to the permanent weight of the object, but that's also accounted for in the paper.
Okay, so that they may not even be necessary from the base plate on. So you just add them to maybe the top layer of lattice structure and just to support the surface there.
Exactly. They connect the top cells in the lattice structure to the top internal surface. So this extra support structure is only lasts, I don't know, 5-10 millimeters or something like that. It's not building from the base. It's building from the internal lattice structure.
Okay, thank you.
you for the question and also for the answer. Do we have another question from the audience?
May I ask one question?
Okay, Philip.
I have a question for Professor Graziosi. In your paper, I saw a very nice picture of parameterization of the notch joint. My question is how this thickness of this notch influence the, let's say, deformability of this compliant mechanism. Can you please elaborate a little bit?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes, it's the most important parameter for this planar. It's a planar notch joint. So indeed, in the paper, you can find the formula that we use to parameterize and calculate the proper T value, okay, of the planar joint. So everything depends, the design of the planar joint and then of the phalanges of the fingers depend on this value, and we perform some numerical analysis using the TPU properties. Actually, we didn't run an hyperelastic model, so we perform some simplified numerical analysis, and then we 3D printing some small sample of this planar joint, and we tested with some weight just to have an idea of the proper behavior of the planar notch joint. Yes, of course.
Okay.
You should try to find the proper thickness in order to have the right flex bending capability, of course, of the finger with respect to the load that you can apply thanks to the servo motor.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your answer, but now I have one sub question because this thickness is quite small, and as I see, you use the FDM printer, and FDM printer usually has quite thick layers between 0.2 and 0.4. Did you had any problems with printing such notches on FDM? No, everything was fine. Thank you very much. Good to know.
No, actually, I'm always very happy with my Ultimaker machine.
Okay.
So it's not an advertisement, but just years of experience. And actually, we were the tendons and the fingers, everything is print in place, and we use PVA in order to allow the printing of these two parts together, and everything was okay. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you. And sorry, if I may add, thank you for the award, and of course this award goes to the other, also the other co-authors of these papers, in particular to Alessandro and Antonio. So I wanted to add only this. We have been two brilliant students, let me say. Now they are mechanical engineers and they are professional, but at that time they were brilliant students. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Congratulate them also on behalf of the organizer.
Thank you.
To get this award. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have any further question? If Kai-Erik, Steffan, if you are speaking something, please unmute yourself. You must unmute yourself.
Try to press mic icon on your screen. Below all the tiles.
Okay, while we are waiting, maybe another question for this awarded. Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry,
yes,
I hope you can hear me. It was a failure of my browser. So, yeah, I can add a question. So the attachment of the tendon to the finger structure can be a possible weak point. So yeah, this leads me to my first question. How will the finger structure behave in case of an overload of the force at the fingertips? And yeah, the second question drives the Ultimaker, because we have an Ultimaker too, and it's possible to use multi-material printing. So have you considered this for the finger joints?
Thank you for these very interesting questions. So concerning to the capability, grasping capability of our hand, actually we calculated the maximum load that we could, the hand could grasp, and considering the servo motors, of course, that we used. And of course, we use also servo horn to support the movement of the finger from this point of view. And yes, you're right, there are limits in this. We tested the hand using very light samples. So what was interesting for us was not only a matter of weight, let me say, but also to test the grasping capability of this hand, thanks to, with respect to different type of targets, having different geometric dimension. Yes, I mean, you're right. It's a critical part, of course, the hand with the higher load, let me say, in terms of weight, we should redesign and things the hand take into account, for example, different type of materials and different type of motors. Yes. And concerning multi-material printing, yes, this is a very interesting feature, capability of the Ultimaker in general, of dual extruder FDM printers. Actually, in our case, we realized that it was not necessary to have this multi-material part, because the TPU, according to the way you design and you assign the thickness, of course, you can have exploit the capability of the TPU as a material, flexible material, as well as you can create some more stiff part of the component. Yeah, but it could be another design choice that can be explored. Thank you.
Thank you.
But of course, you have to also to take into account the adhesion and the interface, how it works, of two materials, which is another very interesting topics in multi-material with FDM.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Just a comment to this question. If you will be able to use material jetting technologies, maybe it will be also very interesting to produce, for example, a kind of a meta material that will satisfy your final properties of the part. We had at our faculty the PolyJet matrix technology, and with this technology you really can do some great things in area of polymer printing.
Yeah. Of course.
Please try it in your further research.
Yes, thank you. Actually, there are also other already interesting papers. There is a paper that is mentioned in my paper in the literature review about the possibility to have a kind of lattice structures and for the finger, for the entire finger, in order to increase the capability of the finger for the bending and having also the proper stiffness, for example, at the fingertip for properly grasping the object. So there are many design opportunities and research opportunities in this field. So thank you for the suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you can coat this lattice structure with kind of rubber-like material from outside surface to get more realistic finger, more similar to our.
Yes.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Do we have a further question? We have 5 minutes more to the end of this session. Or maybe if the authors have something to add to their presentations, maybe.
I can ask a second question to the parameters on support structure design. For support structures, heat conduction is a very important function for this technology you used. So how will it be considered within the design process? And yeah, how do you want to connect it to the other design parameters and the parameters of the building process?
Okay. Yeah, for this, actually in the first study, we don't consider it and only go for the overall parameters or the job results then. And in a new study that we're currently working on, we use several parameter studies in ANSYS Workbench with the additive manufacturing simulation. And then we can see what effect each design parameter of the tree-like support has done later on the overall deformation of the part. And as I said also in my paper, I chose the overall deformation of the part because it's a continuously measurable value. And so the heat effect is actually already taken into account for.
I have a question for Kai, if I'm not wrong, because your paper is about the helmet, the example of the helmet.
That was the example, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how functional analysis has inspired the generation of this lattice inner core of the helmet? Yeah.
Yeah, we want to support a systematic approach to find parts of the product where additive manufacturing is, very you can use these potentials to optimize or improve the product. So I mentioned one characteristic. This characteristic was input and output variables of the product. So you find then the interface to the customer. So this is one potential for additive manufacturing processes. Another one would be a variant-specific function. So we use these characteristics to find a point in the product structure, and then we look at the potentials of these manufacturing technologies, and then you get the idea of, okay, you can use lattice structures to combine some parts of the product, maybe.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we have time for one short question, because we are 2 minutes before the end of the session. Well, if not,
maybe just one additional information for Axel and Nordin. I wrote him a direct message on the meshing algorithm used in ANSYS Workbench. So just as notification, maybe you can read it.
I didn't quite catch that. Oh, you sent me a... Okay.
Axel, can you read the question on the chat? Okay, I can put it. Well, Peter Toland is very active, and he put one comment. It's a nice illustration of the structure in Figure 8 and in Axel's paper. Okay, it's a credit to you. And another one would be quite interesting to use a carbon fiber printer to add carbon fiber into the tendon, because it's printed flat. Adding carbon fiber could easily be added in the tendon. So probably this is for last presentation. Yeah. So do you have any comments on this?
Okay, concerning the idea of carbon fiber, yeah, I think it's great. The only thing is that in our case, we wanted to have a unique assembly, let me say, so print the tendon and the phalanges all together. So I don't know whether it's simple enough to use also carbon fiber for the flanges. So here the idea was to have a kind of low-cost simplified design. But of course, if we think to increase the capability of the hand with the heavier weight, let me say, it could be another opportunity, of course. Yeah.
I think the continuous fiber that you can print with some of the Markforged and similar printers, as long as it's flat, you can have a continuous carbon fiber just that you embed in the print, and that should work quite well, I think. So that would be cool to test. I don't think that the Markforged is so good printing TPU, but you can maybe play with it a bit.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for the suggestion.
Thank you very much to everyone. We are now at the end of our session. I would like to thank you, to the audience, to the participants to this presentation, but most of all to the presenters on very nice papers, very nice presentations, and also very interesting discussion, because you were the main actors of this presentation. So thank you very much, all of you, for a very interesting session. And once again, congratulations to awarded authors in our session. Thank you, and bye to everyone. I will now close the session. Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.